The night was cold, and the wind whispered through the trees. Aaron walked carefully along the narrow forest path, his flashlight flickering weakly. He had been camping nearby, but something strange had woken him up. A distant, unfamiliar sound, almost like a whisper calling for help. As he stepped deeper into the woods, he suddenly stopped. A figure stood between the trees, barely visible in the dim moonlight. His heart pounded. It was a woman, but something about her was different. She was tall, with smooth, silver-like skin that shimmered faintly under the moon. Her glowing blue eyes locked onto his, filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. Her long, dark hair flowed down her back, and she held her arm tightly as if she were injured. Aaron hesitated. Was she human, or was she something else? Hello, he called out, keeping his voice calm. The woman flinched at his voice, taking a step back. She looked exhausted, her breathing unsteady. It was clear that she was hurt. Aaron raised his hands, showing that he meant no harm. "You're hurt," he said gently. "Let me help you." The woman looked around as if afraid someone was chasing her. Then, after a long pause, she spoke in a soft, melodic voice. "Are you human?" Aaron's eyes widened. "Yes." "And you're not from here, are you?" She hesitated but finally shook her head. "No." Aaron felt a shiver run down his spine. An actual alien, standing in front of him. It was unbelievable. She swayed suddenly, her legs giving out. Without thinking, Aaron rushed forward and caught her before she collapsed. Her body was cold, unnaturally cold. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said firmly. She looked up at him, her blue eyes filled with uncertainty. "Why? Help me?" Aaron hesitated for a moment before answering with a small smile. "Because that's what humans do." The alien woman stared at him, as if trying to understand his words. Then, slowly, she nodded. Aaron knew this night was only the beginning of something much bigger than he could ever imagine. The alien girl sat in the shadows, her body trembling from exhaustion and hunger. Her silver eyes flickered weakly as she watched the human move around his small home. She had never been this close to a human before. Her people had always warned her. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and selfish. But this one, he was different. Daniel, the human, placed a plate of food on the small table near her. The warm aroma of cooked meat and bread filled the air, making her stomach twist in pain. She swallowed hard, her pride screaming at her not to accept charity, but her survival instincts were stronger. "You need to eat," Daniel said gently, stepping back to give her space. The alien girl hesitated. Was this a trick? A test? But her body ached, and she knew she wouldn't last much longer without food. Slowly, she reached forward, her clawed fingers shaking as she grabbed a piece of bread. She sniffed it cautiously before taking a small bite. The warmth spread through her, filling the emptiness inside. Daniel watched in silence, his expression calm. He didn't stare at her like the others had. He didn't flinch at her fangs or the strange markings on her arms. He simply let her eat. After a few moments, she looked up at him. "Why? Why are you helping me?" Her voice was soft, but filled with suspicion. Daniel shrugged. "Because you need help. It's that simple." The alien girl frowned. "Your kind doesn't help mine. My people say humans only care about themselves." Daniel chuckled. "Not all of us." He leaned against the wall. "You're not the first one to think that way. But I believe in helping when I can. No one should starve." She lowered her gaze, confused. Could it really be that simple? After finishing the meal, she sat back, her energy slowly returning. She still didn't trust him, but for now, she was safe. Daniel sighed. "You should get some rest. Looks like you've been through a lot." The alien girl hesitated before nodding. "I am." She paused, unsure if she should reveal her name, but something about him made her want to take a chance. "My name is Lariah." Daniel smiled. "Nice to meet you, Lariah. You can stay here until you figure things out." Loraya didn't reply, but for the first time in days, she felt something unfamiliar. The alien girl, still weak and hungry, looked at the human with wide, uncertain eyes. She had never seen anyone like him before. His skin was rougher than hers, his eyes were smaller, but there was something in them, something warm. He handed her a piece of food. It was simple, just a piece of bread, but to her, it felt like a treasure. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. She hesitated for a second, her pride making her pause. But her empty stomach growled again, louder this time. She took a small bite, then another. The taste was strange but good. Her sharp teeth made quick work of the food. She had never eaten anything like this before, but right now, it was the best thing she had ever tasted. The human watched her, smiling a little. He didn't seem afraid of her. That was new. Most creatures ran when they saw her. Even among her own kind, she was different, an outcast. She swallowed and finally spoke, her voice hoarse but soft. "Why did you help me?" The human shrugged. "You were hungry." The answer confused her. No one helped without a reason. In her world, kindness always had a price, but he had given her food, and he had asked for nothing in return. Her mind struggled to understand, but her body knew one thing. She was safe for now. A cold wind blew through the ruined alley where she had collapsed. She shivered. Her thin clothes offered little protection. The human noticed. Without a word, he removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth of it startled her. It smelled different, not bad, just unfamiliar. Like earth and something else, something safe. She pulled it around herself, feeling its warmth seep into her cold skin. She looked up at him again, trying to find the trick, the deception. But there was nothing in his face except quiet patience. "Who are you?" she finally asked. He smiled. "Just a guy." She stared at him, trying to decide if she could trust him. Her body ached, her strength was gone. For now, she had no choice. She sighed and leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment. The human sat beside her, silent but not unwelcome. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel completely alone. The alien girl, Syria, sat by the fire, watching the human, Daniel, with curious eyes. She had never met someone like him before. His kindness confused her. Why had he saved her? What did he want in return? Daniel was busy heating some food. He glanced at Syria and smiled. "You don't have to look so scared. I told you, I won't hurt you." Syria hesitated. She had been taught to fear humans, but Daniel was different. He had protected her, given her food, and even wrapped her injured arm. She lowered her gaze, feeling something strange inside. Was it trust? Daniel handed her a piece of cooked meat. "Here, it's safe to eat." Syria hesitated, then took a small bite. Warmth spread through her body. It was delicious. She had not eaten properly in days. She looked at him, eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you." Daniel chuckled. "You're welcome. So, what's your story? How did you end up here, injured and alone?" Syria's eyes darkened. She clutched the cloth around her wound. "I was betrayed. My own people left me behind. They said I was weak." Daniel frowned. "That's awful. No one deserves that." Syria's fingers tightened around the food. "Humans are supposed to be cruel, but you are not." Daniel leaned back, looking at the stars. "Not all humans are bad, just like not all aliens are bad, right?" Syria nodded slowly. Maybe she had judged humans too quickly. The fire crackled between them, warming the cold night. For the first time in a long time, Syria felt safe. But deep inside, she knew danger still lurked. Her enemies would come for her, and she wasn't sure if Daniel could protect her from them. The alien girl sat near the fire, her glowing eyes fixed on the human who had saved her. She had never met someone like him before, so strange, yet so kind. His rough hands carefully handed her a warm drink. The heat spread through her cold fingers as she took a sip. "Feeling better?" the human asked, his voice gentle. She nodded slowly. "Yes. Thank you." The words felt unfamiliar on her tongue. Her people did not express gratitude in the same way. But this human had given her food, warmth, and safety. He had no reason to help her, yet he did. For a long moment, there was silence between them, only the crackling of the fire filling the space. Then she finally asked, "Why did you save me?" The human chuckled. "Do I need a reason?" She tilted her head, confused. "Among my kind, no one helps without expecting something in return." He smiled and shrugged. "Well, humans are different. We help because we want to." His words made her heart feel strange, like a warmth she had never known before. No one in her life had ever done something without a purpose. Everything was about survival, strength, and debts to be paid. She lowered her gaze. "I have nothing to give you." The human shook his head. "You don't have to give me anything." She stared at him, searching for a lie, but there was none. He meant what he said. It was shocking and a little terrifying. She had learned to fear kindness. It always had a price. But this human, he expected nothing. The fire crackled again, breaking the silence. Outside, the cold wind howled, but here, next to him, she felt safe for the first time in her life. Maybe, just maybe, humans were not as weak as she had once believed. And maybe she wasn't as alone as she had always thought. The alien girl sat near the fire, her glowing eyes fixed on the human who had saved her. She had never met someone like him before, so strange, yet so kind. His rough hands carefully handed her a warm drink. The heat spread through her cold fingers as she took a sip. "Feeling better?" the human asked, his voice gentle. She nodded slowly. "Yes. Thank you." The words felt unfamiliar on her tongue. Her people did not express gratitude in the same way. But this human had given her food, warmth, and safety. He had no reason to help her, yet he did. For a long moment, there was silence between them, only the crackling of the fire filling the space. Then she finally asked, "Why did you save me?" The human chuckled. "Do I need a reason?" She tilted her head, confused. "Among my kind, no one helps without expecting something in return." He smiled and shrugged. "Well, humans are different. We help because we want to." His words made her heart feel strange, like a warmth she had never known before. No one in her life had ever done something without a purpose. Everything was about survival, strength, and debts to be paid. She lowered her gaze. "I have nothing to give you." The human shook his head. "You don't have to give me anything." She stared at him, searching for a lie, but there was none. He meant what he said. It was shocking and a little terrifying. She had learned to fear kindness. It always had a price. But this human, he expected nothing. The fire crackled again, breaking the silence. Outside, the cold wind howled, but here, next to him, she felt safe for the first time in her life. Maybe, just maybe, humans were not as weak as she had once believed. And maybe, she wasn't as alone as she had always thought. The silence in the alien village was heavy. The stars above twinkled like distant watchers, unaware of the tense moment unfolding below. The human, Jake, stood firm, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. Across from him, the alien girl, Lyra, clenched her fists, her glowing eyes filled with uncertainty. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why are you helping me?" Jake sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because it's the right thing to do. I don't care if you're alien or human. You needed help." Lyra's people, the Xilarians, murmured among themselves. They had never trusted outsiders, especially not humans. Their history with Jake's kind had been full of conflict and betrayal. But this man, this strange, stubborn human, had done something no one else had. He had risked everything for Lyra. A tall Xilarian elder stepped forward, his deep voice cutting through the whispers. "Human, you saved her life. That is a debt we do not take lightly. But you must understand, we do not allow outsiders among us. Jake met the elder's gaze, unflinching. Then let me leave. But let Lyra decide her own fate. Lyra's heart pounded. For the first time in her life, someone had given her a choice. She looked at Jake, then at her people. Fear gripped her, fear of exile, of the unknown. But there was also hope. I choose. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. I choose to go with him. Gasps filled the air. The elder's expression darkened, but he nodded slowly. Then go, child. But remember, once you leave, you cannot return. Lyra turned to Jake, her eyes shining with emotion. Are you sure about this? Jake grinned. I've come this far. No turning back now. Together, they stepped toward the unknown, leaving behind an old life for something new, something neither of them fully understood. But as they walked under the endless sky, one thing was certain. They were not alone. After everything that had happened, the human couldn't believe his eyes as he stood in front of her. The alien woman, who had been so cold and distant in the beginning, now looked at him with a softness in her gaze that he had never expected. Her previous caution and the walls she had built around herself had vanished completely. The alien woman stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. There was no sign of fear, no hesitation in her movements. It was almost as though she had made a decision to trust him, something she had never done before with any human. I was wrong about you, she said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. I thought humans were nothing more than simple, selfish creatures. But you showed me something different. The human felt a warmth in his chest. He had always known that humans had the power to surprise, to be better than what others expected. But hearing her say it made all the difference. He had helped her, not out of a desire for reward or recognition, but because he genuinely cared. It was something he had learned over time, not just from her, but from everything he had witnessed in this strange new world. You don't have to thank me, he replied with a small smile. We all need help sometimes. Her lips curved into a faint smile, the first time he had seen her do so. The tension in the air seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of understanding between them. The alien woman, who had once been a mystery to him, now seemed much more human, much more real. I owe you a debt, she said, and I will repay it. The human shook his head. No need for repayment. Just stay with me. We can face whatever comes next, together. Her eyes sparkled with something new. Hope, perhaps. For the first time, she seemed to believe in the possibility of a future beyond the struggles and conflicts that had defined her life until now. Together, she repeated softly, and the words seemed to settle between them like a promise. It was not just an agreement, but a new beginning. A new chapter where the alien and the human no longer stood apart, but side by side. As the sun began to set behind them, casting a golden glow over the landscape, they stood there, united in the quiet understanding that, no matter what the future held, they had each other. And that was enough. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the alien landscape, human and alien faces filled with curiosity stood side by side, facing the unknown. The human, who had become unexpectedly close to the alien woman, could not help but wonder about the strange situation they found themselves in. Why are you so different from the others? The human asked, glancing at her with a mixture of confusion and wonder. You don't seem like the others I've encountered. The alien woman, though clearly more powerful and regal than most, paused before answering. Her alien skin, shimmering with an iridescent glow, reflected the dimming light. She wasn't sure how to explain everything. She knew her people had a complex relationship with humans, but this connection felt different. The warmth between them was undeniable, but there was still so much mystery surrounding her. I am not like them, she said softly. I was never meant to be. My purpose was always different. But now, I must trust you, human, more than anyone else. You are my key to survival. The human's brow furrowed. his mind racing with thoughts. What did she mean? Her words were both cryptic and urgent, but it was clear she was in some kind of danger, and somehow he had become part of her plan. "Trust me," the human repeated. "How am I supposed to help you when I don't even understand what's going on? Why are they after you?" The alien woman's expression darkened. "I was part of something much bigger than I ever imagined," she confessed. "There are forces at play that I cannot control. People, or rather, beings, want to take what I have, to use me for their gain. And you, human, are the only one who can protect me now." Her words weighed heavily in the air. The human looked at her, trying to make sense of it all. His life had been normal until that moment when she had appeared in his life. Now, everything was changed. "I don't know what you mean by protect or help, but if you say it, I'll do my best," he finally said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "But you need to tell me everything. How do we fight these forces? What are they after?" She took a deep breath, preparing herself for what she was about to share. "They are after my power," she said slowly. "But it's not just any power. It's ancient, far older than either of us. And it's tied to my very being." The human nodded, though he still couldn't fully grasp what she was saying. There was so much more to her story than met the eye. "I will trust you," he said again. "Let's figure this out together." The alien woman, a faint smile breaking through her usually guarded face, looked at him. She finally believed that this human, despite his lack of knowledge and experience, had the strength and determination to stand by her side. The journey ahead would be difficult, but at least for now, they were not alone. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The quiet days seemed to drag on for the human, but his life had changed forever. Every time he looked at the alien woman, his heart raced. Her eyes, full of mystery and strength, had captivated him since the day they met. Now, after everything they had been through together, he could no longer deny it. He had fallen for her. She had shown him a world beyond his imagination. Her intelligence, her courage, and her quiet kindness had slowly wrapped around his heart. The alien woman, who once seemed like a distant figure, was now a person he couldn't imagine living without. He found himself thinking about her constantly, and his heart would swell every time they were together. However, there were still moments of doubt. The human couldn't help but wonder if he truly understood her. She was so different from him, so far from everything he knew. He often caught himself wondering if she could ever see him as more than just a human. The differences between them seemed so vast, yet the bond between them had grown stronger than he ever thought possible. One evening, as they sat under the stars, the alien woman turned to him, her voice soft but steady. "Do you still think we're so different?" she asked, her eyes searching his. The human hesitated. The question had always been in the back of his mind, and he could no longer avoid it. He had grown to understand her, to respect her. But did she feel the same way about him? "I don't know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I think we're more alike than I ever realized. But other times, it's like there's a wall between us." The alien woman's eyes softened, and for the first time, he saw vulnerability in her gaze. "Maybe the wall isn't there to separate us," she said, her words carrying a quiet wisdom. "Maybe it's there to make us stronger, to help us understand what we mean to each other." His heart skipped a beat as her words sank in. It was true. They had faced so many challenges together, and yet here they were, standing side by side. Their differences weren't something that kept them apart. They were the things that made their bond special. As the days passed, the human realized something important. It wasn't the differences between them that mattered. It was their shared experiences, the moments of laughter, and the way they understood each other's silence. They had built something that was more powerful than anything he could have imagined when they first met. The alien woman looked at him, her expression warm and reassuring. "You're not just a human," she said, her voice low and comforting. "You're mine." And in that moment, the human knew the truth. They didn't need to be the same. Their differences were the strength of their bond. Together, they were unstoppable.